Good afternoon. We are here today with Tony Pugh, EMEA DC Solutions Leader for Aon Hewitt, to discuss the following question. Human resource directors have plenty on their plate at the moment, but what are the key challenges they now face when helping employees save for retirement? So, Tony, pensions have been high on the list of FD's concerns in recent years. Deficits in defined benefit schemes have focused minds and have been seen as a finance issue rather than the concern of HR. But things have changed more recently, and pensions, and defined contribution pensions in particular, are firmly back among the responsibilities of HR. What's driven that?
Certainly, finance directors are very focused on DB. They have been for some years now, noting that the impact that the DB deficit will have on company finances. So not overly surprising. And lots of finance directors have developed strategies to manage those deficits and feel more in control. But that said, there are plenty of others that are still struggling with the issue and have much to do. So by virtue of that, many finance directors are still focused on pension, but as you say, particularly on DB. And it's fair also to say that finance directors don't tend to engage with DC, as they see this as an HR issue, with the DC plan being an administration function, a communication function with fixed costs. That said, I think there's possibly a flaw in the thinking there, in that we've seen as DC plans have grown in the UK, they can now carry very substantial costs of administration and operation. And so very easily you can find the average plan running into operational costs of many hundreds of thousands of pounds. And yet in the market, new options have been developed and now exist widely that can deliver a more efficient and more effective, i.e. lower cost, arrangements such as a master trust. So really, maybe FDs should just think again and look at the new options that are out there that could actually be driving down annual costs for pension delivery. And in addition, most people will be aware that we have auto-enrolment contribution increases that will drive up the cost of many DC pension plans in the UK. And those cost increases come in 2018 and 2019. So if they haven't done already, we really do need finance directors to start thinking about the cost pressures that will come on their DC plans and work hand in hand with the HRD to see if a more effective solution can be delivered for the company.
So what are the key challenges now?
So with when it comes to defined contribution, particularly the key challenges, I would say there are four in particular. And the first of these is increased regulation. And regulators around the world, and the UK is no exception, have been very focused on protecting the consumer, particularly in the DC pension space. And by virtue of that, we've seen a very large increase in the amount of regulation, and that is causing issues for employers and trustees and governors alike. So the cost of compliance associated with meeting the new regulation, as well as the risk of breaching new regulations, is an issue that's high on the agenda with many, if not all, organisations. Second issue is the one of value for money, and getting employees to engage with the DC pension plan such that they and the employer are optimising the benefits of membership and therefore getting value for money. So that's the second issue. And the third, I would say, is adequacy. This is one that's often not thought about, particularly by employers, but will increasingly come to the table as a significant issue. And what I think is essential is that we need to get employees and employers to act now to mitigate the risk of the employee not being able to afford to retire at an age that is appropriate for both the company and the employee themselves. So really, FDs should be starting to think about this as well as HRDs, because if the pension arrangement is inadequate and members cannot afford to retire, under UK law now, there's no way for the employer to force the employee to retire. So we'll see an increasing later retirement age, and that could have implications for business costs and for productivity issues, which will firmly be on the finance director's agenda. And the fourth issue is whether the actual DC vehicle that the company is using for its pension plan is fit for purpose. We've seen a massive shift and development in the DC delivery market over the last few years. And every corporate really should be thinking about whether their current plan is fit for purpose, or is it just an accident of history. What I mean by that is lots of employers will have bolted on a DC section to their existing DB plan when they moved from DB to DC. That was seen as a quick and an easy thing to do, and they already had the procedures in place to support DB. But as the DC plan has grown and as other opportunities have grown in the market, again it begs this question, is the arrangement that the employer has in place actually the best that will meet the needs of both them and the employee? So is the vehicle fit for purpose?
What are the options now open to organisations? I hear a lot about aggregating schemes and delegating aspects of them. What do those approaches entail?
Well, I'd like to split that into the two constituent parts and first of all look at aggregation. And it's quite common that employers have more than one DC plan and indeed more than one AVC arrangement in place, driven by past acquisitions or maybe changes in pension strategy. Now, we know that the legislator is currently looking at easing bulk transfer regulations, which will drive directly into this area. But in the meantime, there is plenty that employers can do to already merge existing arrangements and thereby improve efficiency, drive an improved member experience and service, as well as drive down cost of delivery and reduce the risk of regulatory breach. So what can an employer do in terms of aggregation? Well, of course, it could just merge all existing plans into one existing single vehicle within the company, or it could look to take all of the current DC arrangements within the employer and put them in an outsourced provider arrangement, such as a solution as a master trust. So that's the aggregation piece. And then secondly, to deal with your question on delegation, there are a number of areas where clients can delegate part of or all of their DC pension arrangements. So for those running a trust-based plan, they could appoint just a delegated investment manager, and the investment manager would take the responsibility for implementing the client's investment strategy, making asset allocation decisions, and changing underlying managers as and when appropriate. So that's, if you like, the entry point into delegation, just delegating the investment piece of things. Now then, at the next level, companies could use a bundled DC solution, whereby the administration, the communication, and the investment is all outsourced via a single provider. Thereby, the trustees are only managing a single entity and introducing plan management efficiencies and generally much lower cost. And then finally, at the final level, a company could fully delegate, including outsourcing the plan governance by using either a group personal pension arrangement or a master trust. Such a solution can lead to significant resource and cost savings for an employer, whilst improving member services and eventual outcomes for the individuals who are members of the plan. And that's because all parties benefit from the economies of scale achieved by the provider of a master trust or a GPP. I can quote an example of a client that I'm currently working with, whereby they could move from an existing standalone DC plan to a bundled arrangement or a master trust and save themselves several £100,000 a year in terms of administration costs. And at the very same time, the members' investment charges will go down on moving to the new provider and a better investment fund. So there can be really a win-win situation for all parties.
Why would you take one approach over another?
Well, there are a number of factors or drivers as to which approach an organisation or a company could take, and these include, firstly, the level of internal resource that an employer is able to commit to running a pension plan, both now and in the future. So if you're a resource-constrained firm, then really the area that you should be looking at is either a group personal pension or a master trust, and that will help minimise your involvement and your operational costs, thus playing to your needs and recognising the fact that your resources are limited. The next factor is the current pension arrangements that you already have. And if you have a standalone trust-based plan now and you want to outsource that, it would be generally better to use a master trust or a bundled trust and do a bulk transfer of all the existing member accounts, which you can do on a trust-to-trust move and transfer. And that would then enable you to wind up the shell trust, an empty trust if you like, quickly and efficiently, move to a situation where you have now delegated the majority of your pension arrangement. And I think another factor is the profile of your membership. For example, if you have a membership which is perhaps young, transient, with high turnover, then using a GPP may be very suitable for you, and that's because individuals could continue paying into their own policy after leaving employment with you. And another factor is also your culture and maybe your beliefs. So for firms who are more paternal in nature or potentially cautious about making significant change, it might be that starting with delegation of just the investment-only piece might be logical and a first step towards future further delegation.
Is there a danger that by moving to a delegated approach, member engagement becomes harder to achieve?
Okay, well, I can see why employers might think that intuitively, in that by outsourcing your DC plan, an employer might think that the provider would have less understanding of their employee needs. But that said, there's absolutely no reason why an employer can't still be fully involved in member engagement post moving to a delegated model. They would be doing that by their choice rather than necessity, but they can very well do so. Also, alongside that, if an employer moves to a delegated model for their DC plan, then that will free up internal resource and will likely also reduce employer cost. So with those resource and cost savings, the employer could choose to spend those on increasing member engagement, leading to a better outcome. And another really important factor is that the delegated providers have access to excellent member tools and can leverage their insights into what works well for a wider population when it comes to engagement. And they can also afford to invest in new technologies that support engagement, such as Aon's Big Blue member portal, which allows individuals to aggregate and manage all of their pension arrangements under one roof, and also put alongside their wider savings, as well as managing their debts and spending needs all through one portal. So in my view, more often than not, the better delegation solutions in the market can and should lead to improved overall member engagement.
What impact might delegated options have on member outcomes?
Well, a good delegated provider solution can and should significantly enhance member outcomes in a number of ways. Firstly, the provider will have scale and able to access the best investment managers and strategies, which should lead to improved member investment returns. So, for example, Aon's flagship DC fund in 2016 returned 30%, beating its benchmark by 2%. That, of course, is improving the member outcomes. A delegated manager will also automatically replace underperforming managers, and that means members are protected from having poorly rated managers who are expected to give lower levels of performance. Also, the delegated manager will use its economies of scale to drive down the costs that are borne by members, and of course any costs that a member is bearing through their annual management charge will reduce their future outcome. And then finally, a delegated provider will have scale to invest in the latest technologies to be able to enhance member experience and education, and thereby enable members to make better decision making, which again should improve their eventual outcomes. So I'd like to sort of kind of wrap that up and add to it. So whilst there are obvious reasons for modest size, perhaps sub 200, 250 million standalone trust-based schemes to consider the advantages of delegation, we're actually even seeing super-sized schemes of up to £1 billion going this way and starting to use full delegation. And in short, every employer should now be considering if a delegated solution might better suit their objectives and deliver enhanced benefit for both the employees and the company alike.
Great. Thank you for joining us today, Tony. Take care.
Thank you.